century superhuman. And I know that the answers are inside. Yeah, I am a 21st century superhuman. Now is the time. Come on everyone, let's celebrate. We are the children of the sun. I can see it when I look into your eyes. We are the same, and we are light, yeah, we are one. Hear now, hear my ancient prayer and sing along. We are awakening as one. We can make a difference, yeah, we can be the change it takes to make the world a lot more fun. Well, if you're feeling kinda down and you need some inspiration to remember who you are, oh, now, child, please don't frown. You can choose a new vibration and these words can take you far. I am a 21st century superhuman.
Hello and welcome to the Bridge to Paradise 21st Century Superhuman guest show. So we've got a couple of really wonderful guests on today. It's going to be just me as your host today, Carrie Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman Quantum Lifestyle. And today we're doing a show on the wonderful CCN Conscious Consumer Network, which is bringing the most amazing, wonderful programming to the world, things for us to think about, learn about, and grow with in a world that's overrun with media that keeps us asleep. So we're so glad to be on this Awake Media Network and so grateful for the producers who have brought it into being. So today we're doing a show on conscious relationship. And we have a couple named Landon Carter and Diane Covington-Carter, who I've actually known Landon since I think about 1994 or something like that. We both lived in Southwest Colorado in a little town that was like a village where we were all like a big family. And Landon's, his claim to fame that I know of is he's gone out and done all these athletic pursuits. And I know that he's been a trainer for many years as well. But Landon went out and decided to become an international rower and became a rowing champion for his age group. And I think has defended that championship for many years. He can tell us about that. And Diane is an award-winning photographer and writer. And they wrote a book called Falling in Love Backwards. And I am going to let them introduce themselves and share a little about their background right now. But we're so glad to have you two here today. And beautiful, wonderful people who I have very deep respect for, and I have very deep respect for what you'll be sharing with us today. I think tools that are critical to those who are seeking relationship in this world and how to sustain it as we're growing and emerging faster, I think, than we ever have been in human history. So tell us about you guys. Tell us a little bit about your personal backgrounds, and then we'll get into the story here. And these guys are broadcasting from New Zealand, so we're
all right. Well, I'll go first. This is Diane. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We just want to say we're in New Zealand right now.
You guys, we've got you frozen up. I'm wondering if we should have you
off the grid.
Diane,
let's make the internet a little bit things. You have to forgive us.
Yes.
Okay.
We always do kind of a calming down so that the internet can carry us. Oh, you guys are freezing up again.
Sorry.
Biggie, any suggestions? Let's yep. And I might have you just turn off your video and just talk for a little bit. Do you want to try that?
Sure. Do I do that at the bottom?
Do that at the bottom where the audio is.
Okay, I'll just
audio.
No, she said turn off the video, right? You want me to turn off the video?
Yeah. And go ahead and tell us your backgrounds.
Right?
Yeah, just try the audio.
Okay, do you want us to just try the audio, right?
Yeah, that seems to be coming through pretty good. So go ahead and tell us about yourselves.
Yeah, so this is Diane, obviously. I've been on a path of personal growth as far back as I can remember. Even as a little kid, I was wondering why people weren't asking the real important questions in school. You know, like how can we figure out to feed those hungry children in China that are starving, and why do my parents not get along? And, you know, so I've been on this path my whole life. And I first met Landon in 1979 when he was leading a training that I was in that changed my life. It was 6 days. And then, you know, went on my own way for 30 years. And then we met again in 1979. So, I mean, 2009, 1979 was the first time. So it's just been a wonderful journey. And to meet Landon, you know, after 30 years was just the piece of cake on the top, the frosting on the cake. And we've discovered so much about relationships being together. We're really excited to share that with everybody.
Yeah, good. So
did that come across all right, Carrie?
That came across really well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll try the video in little spurts or something. We'll
that
see.
would be great. Yep.
Yeah, so just to put my part in, listen, I guess after going to all of the, you know, the right schools and trying to be the best and trying to fit in, and, you know, being an athlete at the university and college, and you know, and thinking, okay, if I even married the right woman, the sister of my roommate at prep school, that, you know, that everything was going to work out for me. And you know, we went in the Peace Corps together, and she left me, and she should have left me. I was too selfish, and yeah, and, you know, I mean, literally, she should have left. And then I came back, and I was in Aspen.
Why don't you guys give the video a try again a little bit?
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
There you are.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll try it for a moment here. So anyway, I was in Aspen, and I, you know, was racing motocross and skiing and working at promoting and developing Snowmass at Aspen. You know, so now I was doing all the things that I had wanted to do and kind of living the dream that people were supposed to, you know, live. And I wasn't happy. I was, you know, deeply unhappy. And, you know, I kind of think that it was like I topped out. And there was a song at the time by Peggy Lee called "Is That All There Is?" And I really went, yeah, is this it? Is this, you know, what it's supposed to be like? Because I'm not happy. And I then read Autobiography of a Yogi, and Paramahansa Yogananda was dead, and Satya Sai Baba was alive over in India. So off to India I went, and, you know, meditated 6 hours a day and spent time with him. But anyway, a major shift in my life took place at that time. And since
So Landon, that's a real example of a life where you were able to progress really fast and accomplish all your dreams and get to be sort of at the top of the heap, so to speak, and think you could have everything you wanted, and get to discover there that maybe you still didn't have what you wanted.
Exactly. And
28.
Exactly. Here I was 28, and, you know, as I said, I've been really unhappy. And I said, you know, there's something fundamentally wrong with this kind of Horatio Alger you know, worldview that I had been fed since,
right.
You know, since I could remember. So,
and you had kids, right?
No, I was by myself. I'd been divorced from my first wife. I was now by myself. I remember when I went over to India, I said, I'm unhappy. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to sit in a cave until I get whatever it is. My mother was crying, saying, oh, what about all that expensive education?
You
you've been to Yale, you've been to Harvard Business School, and
to go sit in India.
To go sit in India in a cave. But anyway, it's funny because when I was over there, I shared, with some letters to them, and she came over to India with my father, and she became a Satya Sai Baba devotee for the rest of her life. So, you never know.
That's really cool.
That is cool. So then from that time on, I've been really looking at, one, who am I, of course, but then also how do we create, how do we create the reality that we would want? How can we, if we are minor gods in our universe, if we are sons and daughters of God, however you want to say that.
And we talk about that in all of our 21st century superhuman discussions, that we are creators, that our thoughts are creating our reality, that this is something we gave up thousands of years ago, putting blame on the outer world and saying, oh, it's their fault. It's up to them that my life is this way, instead of taking responsibility that this is my creation that I'm surrounded with.
Yeah, totally. So, but that doesn't automatically, here I am 28 and over in India, et cetera, like that. And what you just shared, that realization was not embedded in me or, embodied in my being at the time. That was something I had to actually learn and practice and see, how that actually worked. So, as I say, so since that time, that's kind of been my path. And I joined the EST, which at the time was kind of the fast road to enlightenment. And did work with that for 7 years and trained, many thousands of people.
Yeah. And I always say, having worked with Tony Robbins and I sort of skipped the EST, period, although I had a lot of friends who did it. But I think EST was one of those organizations that kind of foundationally laid down a lot of principles that fed into a lot of future human change programs that were extremely successful. And EST was a little confrontive. That's one reason I never went to it. But I think it also was extremely successful for people who just thought they had it all to start taking a look inside.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to say that when I heard EST say you could change your life in 2 weekends, that was unheard of in the 70s, because I went to UCLA and studied psychology. And that was, if you wanted to change your life, you sat on an analyst's couch for 10 years and maybe you would change something. So 2 weekends, I thought, I'd have 2 weekends. I can try this. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
So that was where you guys first met, right?
Yeah, it was his program called the 6-Day Course, which he created, where he took us off, Landon, he took us off in the mountains and got us up early and had us jogging and then took us on these ropes courses where I was absolutely terrified of heights, right? So I did it because I knew if I could do that my whole life would change. And absolutely that was true. Once I had jumped off this mountain on a zip line, I went home and thought, well, it doesn't matter if you're afraid.
So this was an early meeting long before your current.
Yeah, 1979. I was 100 people a week. He had 13 weeks, so he doesn't remember me.
Right.
But he changed my life because of the 6 days, and who I came back a different person who realized I could be afraid and go ahead and do something anyway,
Right.
So I, at the time, was
were you doing the Tyrolean Traverse back then?
Yes, we did that.
I remember hearing so many stories about that, where you go like hand over a canyon on the rope.
Yeah.
And the zip line where you stand on the edge of the cliff and, Tom Lutz would say, okay, take a breath. And when you're ready, jump off. And I'm thinking, my mind screaming, I'm going to die.
Right.
And I jumped off. It was like, woo! That was fun.
I did a lot of those things, even though I didn't do it with EST. I did them with Tony Robbins, and we ended up actually ultimately building ropes courses and running, corporate team building with them. So anyway, yeah, I think we all have real similar background as far as that goes.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I think S really created a foundation for other workshops to come along and say, yeah, you can change your life. It doesn't have to take 10 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Something in a short period of time that will change you dramatically. And that was
right.
Great.
And how neat to be grounded in what were really foundational principles that kind of culturally came forward at that time to start shifting us out of our slumber.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that was one thing that Werner was really brilliant at.
Yes.
Was coalescing and bringing together some of the best of all the other things, whether it was from the psychological, Jung and Maslow and that tradition, or some of the other workshops that were starting at that time. He really brought it together and packaged it in a way that was very impactful for people. And
yes.
I mean,
that's Werner Erhard, right? I remember reading his bio years ago. If anybody wanted to know about that time period in history, how do you spell his last name?
Erhard.
And do you know the name of his bio? I'm sure anybody could find it by just looking it up. But I remember it being
Erhard.
Yeah, I Google him. He's all over the place.
Yeah, he's you'll find it.
Yeah.
And as I said, he made a really significant contribution to the whole, you might say, shift of consciousness toward people really discovering who they are and some of the principles of being a creative force in a reality that was going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things,
very nicely said.
The Hunger Project came out of that, which was about his saying, look, there's a problem out here. We can solve that if we get enough consciousness applied to it. And a lot of things have kind of taken off from that.
It's still going on, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're ready for more of that these days.
Yeah, well, it needs to be, many, many more people that have the same orientation. I mean, that if you want to look at it globally, which we can go off onto
Gosh,
that.
Landon, maybe that could be your next book.
Yeah.
How do we step into those models and begin really activating more global change as a collective consciousness?
Yeah, very good, Carrie. Because the way I see it is, you have the center circle of the universe you live in is yourself, or this personality, we'll call it, the Landon Carter personality that's sitting here in this body kind of thing. And then the next level out is your intimate relationship. Whether that's a sexual relationship or whether it's just, your brothers or sisters, your really good friends, you're very close, your intimate relationship, then your close circle. And it kind of goes out in, like a pebble dropped in the lake, the concentric circles going out. And so I always felt that you had to figure yourself out first.
You do.
And I would say that if I would look at my path since that time that I woke up when I was 28 in Aspen, Colorado, wondering if, is this all there is? Going over to India, seeing that there's a whole different reality that Sai Baba presented, and actually through his manifestations and, materializing things out of nothing. And
right. Yeah.
talk to somebody who got raised from the dead, who'd been dead for 3 days. It's like, whoa, there's something else happening here that I have no idea. And Harvard School and Yale engineering never prepared me for this.
Isn't that the truth?
So
absolutely.
So then that was kind of, as I said, the path. S really helped me because I had to teach it. You have to sometimes teach what you need to learn yourself, or what you're clear about here that's sometimes a while to embody in your actual behaviors and in your actual kind of way you come into the world on a daily basis.
That's a nice expansion of that saying, we teach best what we most need to learn, because what you made me just realize is we're actually activating it at a deeper level, or actualizing it by teaching it.
Exactly. And so, you know, over time, I did all, you know, other things. Some worked with Lazarus for a while. Was a channel. I've done you know, four or so Vipassana 10-day you know, meditation retreats where you sit from 4:30 in the morning till 10 at night and don't talk to anybody or look at anybody for 10 days. And
let me ask you this. My experience with Vipassana, the few times that I did it, was that literally you begin seeing the particles that creation is made of almost. You go out of the form and into the energy behind the form. Is that kind of true?
I would say that that's true. You know, again, everybody has their own individual experience of that, but I remember my first Vipassana retreat in New Zealand. I called it the agony and the ecstasy because, you know, I had times when I thought, this is so much pain, I can't sustain it one more second,
your body,
you know, let alone this next hour of sitting that I'm going to be here. And then all of a sudden, you know, it would be, oh, well, that was that hour, and I made it. And then I'd be maybe outside and I'd be on my knees weeping with joy at how beautiful and ecstatic and the light and, you know, how complete my life was. And, you know, I kind of went up and down, you know, during that course. And you referred to the energetic. Sometimes I felt like there was a waterfall of energy down through the inside of my body, as if I was just energy flowing. It was the most, you know, a very ecstatic feeling. Of course, it didn't last. And, you know, it's one of those things that's a gift, I think, and not something you can push a button and make it happen again. But maybe anyway, so the long and the short of that is that I'm probably not, I'm not a monk. I mean, or I'm a monk of a different form. I'm more of a person that's a householder, or a person that says, okay, how does all of this apply to, you know, day to day, everyday, you know, life? And I wrote my first book, you know, The Living Awake, which is the practice of transforming everyday life. Because, and I actually, one of my working titles in the beginning was Everyday Enlightenment.
Nice.
But it really has to do with, okay, what are the principles? How do you actually, what are the things you need to know? I wrote it for my kids, kind of. What do you need to know that would assist you in actually being the kind of person that you would want to be and having the kind of life that you want to have?
Nice. So is that book available on Amazon?
It is,
are all of you guys' books available on Amazon?
They are.
And
we'll get to those.
Too. Any bookstore can order them. They're available through distributors like
Great.
Ingram. Yeah.
So Landon, you're kind of, you were at the 28 years old, kind of reaching your peak in Aspen, and then going off to meditate and doing all these different things. And then at what point did you end up having kids and write that book? You know, so you met, and meet Diane and not remember meeting her initially.
So now we're kind of in that crossover. I met a woman when I was in Est, doing the trainings in Hawaii, a woman named Becky, and I fell head over heels for her, and we ended up having 3 children together, basically, and raising them, living in Marin County, north of San Francisco. And
20 years.
Yeah, and we were together 20 years. And I must say that we tried everything we could to have it be successful. And one of the things that I'm certain of at this point is that we didn't know what we needed to know in order to have our relationship work. I mean,
and really that is one reason that we're here today, with, you know, to hear the whole story from you guys, because I think obviously we are in a time where there's a lot of pressure, great change going on, pressure on us as individuals, pressure on us in relationships. And so it's not only great to find someone, fall in love and all of that, but sustainability is a whole nother story, especially in today's world. So
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I would say I did that one the traditional way. I fell in love. There wasn't any question in my mind. She was it. As I said, we had the children. We, had a life. I was off a lot of the time training on the week, all week, weekends, many days, hardly at home. But that was, I was the worker and she was, taking care of the kids and they were growing.
And what may come out in a little bit, would you think you were running like a traditional male pattern at that point of kind of being busy? And
I mean, I wasn't even, she even supported it because we were both part of this, changing the world organization. I mean, it was like, hey, we're making a difference. And then she even joined the organization as soon as the kids were old enough and did consulting work and did work to kind of help people within the organization, keep their own sanity and keep their own, self-centered. And so she was very much involved in it. And, as I said, we if we had problems, we tried to work them out and we tried to do the traditional kinds of things that you do. I must say I was a little bit, arrogant. I was the trainer. So there was a little edge that, kind of the male chauvinist. I know I'm better than.
Probably more than a little.
Yeah, probably more.
And these are the things that you guys unravel in your book, Falling in Love Backwards, which I loved when I read it. I think I cried all the way through the book and I was so impressed at how, particularly Diane kept kind of diving in through these old patterns and saying, I'm going to make this work. It was really great.
Diane's a hero.
Yeah. So where in this cycle did Diane come to your the workshop that you don't remember her being at?
Okay, so toward the end of I joined the S organization in 1973.
Right.
Having been to India, having done it, being a yoga teacher, all that stuff. And then I worked with thousands of people, 50, 60,000 people. And Diane was just one of the people I worked with in 1979. And I left the organization in 1980, kind of burned out.
Yeah. I was in the last group of trainings he did in the 6-day in the last summer. I was really lucky that
that's pretty synchronistic, we would say.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to say that I believe in, trusting your instinct, which tends to be more of a feminine thing. I think maybe men have it too, but we I think as women trust it more. And when there was a movie about training the 6-day course, and when I saw that movie, I just knew I had to do that. And I went and signed up right away, even though I was terrified of heights, because I just knew I had to go,
And so at that time, were you a writer, Diane, writer, photographer, journalist?
Yeah, I had always loved writing and I had worked for a newspaper, but I had 2 little kids. They were 3 and 9 at the time. And so at that moment, I wasn't working, in quotes, I was taking care of kids and actually doing some buying and selling of real estate, which I did very well at. This was in the 70s when in California, real estate was booming and I was buying, fixing up properties and selling them and making a lot of money while my kids were little. So yeah, writing was always been my passion. And it's been one of those things that kind of goes up and down. Now it's totally, in my life. But there have been times when I had to let it go underground in order to make money, which happens sometimes. So I trusted that thing, to sign up for this course, even though my mind was screaming, oh my God, why would you ever do that? You're scared of heights. These people are jumping off mountains. They're rappelling down cliffs, so that was one of my first times when I heard the 2 voices in my head, the who I really am versus this other voice, and
kind of like your soul was calling to you. Your greater destiny was saying, go do this. I mean, I've definitely had those experiences in my life for sure. And they don't even seem rational at the time.
They're not rational. And I love that. And so that's how I ended up doing the 6-day course with Landon, because after he left, us continued that course for many, many years, like 9 more years or something at least, and without him. So luckily I crossed paths with him. And, you know, when he was training us, I could tell who he was. You know, he just has a goodness about him and integrity about him. And I was so impressed with that. I thought he was the most, you know, here he had this prep school, Yale and Harvard, and yet he'd gone off to India. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. You know, I'd never met a man who had all the advantages and still went on this path of personal growth, which I was really committed to, kind of underground. And after I did the 6-day course with him, I just went home and got a divorce and said, hey, you know what? I'm on a different path than you are. And I'm sorry, but we're just not looking, you know, we're not asking the same questions. You know, I'm looking
So the course got you really clear with yourself.
It got me clear that I was terrified of getting a divorce, but that I needed to, because I was looking for answers to questions that my ex-husband wasn't asking. And that was who I was, and I needed to go that way. And so those 30 years on my own before I came back around and met Landon, that's all I did, you know, I was functioning, trying to keep my, you know, kids and everybody, but everything that I wanted was about personal growth. That's all I wanted, you know, and I studied with some amazing teachers and, you know, did every workshop I could and studied clearing and coaching and, you know, NLP and the Enneagram and hypnotherapy and you name it. I was like a human guinea pig.
So those are some really great backgrounds on you guys. And how do we jump from, what's the bridge from there to, go ahead, Diane. I want to hear the story, because I know you thought something that you tell in your book when you met Landon at the first 6-day. And then, let's see the book. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Oh, that was Living Awake.
See, this is when, after Diane had done some work on it, but she'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So basically, you know, in my 30-year path between when I met Landon at the 6-day course and thought he was the most amazing man I'd ever met because of who he was and what he was committed to, I, you know, did all these different things, but writing was always a part of it. So if you fast forward 30 years, by then I was an award-winning writer. And so I thought of him out of the blue. I was meditating one morning and I thought of him out of the blue. I thought, I wonder whatever happened to Landon Carter, you know, and because I was writing in my journal and it was like this really deep, you know, meditation. It's my inner guidance, which I would dialogue with in my journal, said, use everything you've got to make a difference in life. Use all your skills this year. And he had said that to us on the 6th day, use everything you've got to make a difference in life. So that connected. I said, I wonder whatever happened to that guy. And I looked him up on the internet and there he was, and he's, you know, a face. And I thought, oh, he looks kind of vulnerable. It looks like maybe he hasn't had the easiest time. And he was in New Zealand. I thought, wow, how far away can you get, you know? So that was it. I just thought of him. And then I sent him an email. I said, thank you for the difference you made in my life. And he emailed me back and he said, I'm in Ecuador and I'm, you know, doing this great thing. And thank you. And that was it. That was that. So you want to say what you were doing in Ecuador?
I was just say that I'd gotten divorced from my, you know, wife of the children. And I kind of had serial monogamous relationships ever since, and then oftentimes by myself. But I was struggling. For 16 years, I was struggling with relationships. And
so where is this years wise compared to when I knew you in Pagosa?
We talked about 2009.
Yeah. Okay, so that was
Living Awake. I'd already written my book, Living Awake. I had been teaching some workshops on that. There was. In that book, there is a kind of a description of some of the principles of having a relationship, because I never thought that you had to compromise between freedom and connection. I always thought you could have both.
But monogamous, because most people...
Yeah, monogamous. So freedom means freedom to be yourself, you know, to feel free. And not, oh my God, I have to satisfy her, or I got to walk on eggshells this morning because I'm afraid I'm going to upset her or something. That's not freedom.
No.
And then connection, of course, is the deep connection that people do experience, whether they fall in love or whatever. And so, but often what happens is you get connected and then you get upset with each other and then you separate, and for the quote freedom, don't tell me what to do, etc. And then boom, you're oh my God, I can't stand being alone for so long. So then you kind of make up and get back together, and then the pattern starts again. So I thought I could see those things, but I'd never had a partner who was strong enough to stand up to me. And I'll get to that. But, so I had people, walking off in the middle of the night, upset, and, and oh my God,
I just ran across a Thich Nhat Hanh quote recently that says, "You must love in such a way that the person you love feels free."
Nice. Very nice. That would be great.
So really about this 2009 point when you were in Ecuador and Diane connected with you, I really met you about 13 or 14 years before that in Pagosa Springs, 12 years before that. And we were just like, there was a probably 200 or 300 of us that showed up there all at the same time, kind of like this soul family. It was very cool. And we all went out and learned how to snowboard, and we're doing big mountain sports and mountain bike riding. And then you got into rowing, and you set up a rowing thing on the lake in your house where you lived. And so we could come out there and practice rowing. And I remember, doing some of that, and what a neat, we each brought something to that community, and it was really fun. So we got to see each other, and when you live in a community like that, what's also visible is, it's kind of like there aren't secrets, because it's kind of like having a bunch of brothers and sisters. You can see the struggles each person goes through, and, and there's this love there, this respect for one another. And so that was really cool. So this is actually quite a few years after that. And we're going through your serial monogamy and that kind of thing. And then suddenly Diane contacts you.
I'd already immigrated to New Zealand. I had a New Zealand.
Right. I remember when you guys did that. And you guys, you and your family built like cob houses over there. I remember your brother coming to Pagosa. So you have this whole family compound that's futuristic, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's off the grid. It's very green. You can see the color of the adobe behind us. That's adobe.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful.
Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah. So I was bored over here, and that's when I went to Ecuador with some friends, Bill and Lynn Twist, who had started the Pachamama Alliance, which is about Pachamama means Mother Earth, and they were helping the Ashwar, which is a jungle tribe, from the Amazon basin, in some of the most diverse, biodiverse parts of the entire world. And they were helping them maintain their culture and not have the encroachment of logging or oil extraction.
Yeah.
And they're still
And I and a lot of the group I'm involved with at this time have similar involvement to that in Peru right now. In fact, we have shows on CCN from the crew in Peru. We call it Mission Impossible Global and Mission Impossible Peru. It's kind of a fun play.
Yeah, I won the Peace Corps in Peru, so I love that.
Nice, yeah.
So anyway, I was down there, and I visited the Ashwar, their dream culture. There's things to talk about there. But one of the things that happened was that I was with a shaman in the mountains, and I was standing there. I had rubbed a candle over me, and he'd read the candle, and he said, you've had a lot of trouble. He said, you have a lot of trouble with relationships. Your true love is coming, but you've got some work to do.
A true partner.
Your true partner's coming, but you have some work to do. And then, I'm standing there naked, and he's taking, fire and blowing, he takes a little swig of alcohol and blows fire over me. And I thought, well, I'm standing there in his basement on the, this dark, mud floor. And I'm thinking, fine. Well, whatever he said, I guess so. If he says so, and and then.
Can I say one thing quickly? So within 24 hours of this shaman doing that, I thought of him. So I thought, isn't that interesting? You know, the shaman put out this thing, you're going to find a true partner. My little antenna came up and went, oh, I wonder whatever happened to that Landon Carter.
That is really cool. So this is, we say, you know, there is no such thing as time or space. All things are happening concurrently. When we're connected with someone, there really is no distance. That's right. So that's a beautiful, you know, representation of that.
Yeah. So that was when I emailed him, and then he came back to New Zealand, and then he ended up, you know, being in a relationship with another woman that next summer. And then at the end of the summer, I thought, you know, I didn't ever finish his book. I thought it was just a little too dense and a little bit too intellectual. You know, I could help him with this book. And I thought, you know, he was an S trainer. I can be really bold. So I sent this really bold email and said, hey, I'm an award-winning writer. I want to help you make your book better. And so I thought, well, you know, we'll see what happens. And he emailed me right back and he said, well, hey, I'm in San Francisco. Let's get together and talk about it. I thought, okay, that's cool. Because first of all, I thought he's in New Zealand. We'll just email back and forth. So I thought, okay, he's in San Francisco. He said, I'm coming up to Sacramento for a rowing race and we'll get together. I said, okay, great. I thought I'd drive to Sacramento. We'd meet in the Starbucks and have an hour conversation. So then he says, well, I have a van and I'll come up to Nevada City where you live and I'll spend the night. And I was like, whoa, suddenly this guy who I thought was like this ideal man, you know, and I had on a pedestal.
So we're really getting into the book, Falling in Love Backwards, because I remember reading this in your book, right? So you're starting to tell the story of the book.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell that little bit and then I'll leave it.
I love it. No, continue. I think it's great because I wanted to bridge into that.
Yeah, so he did come up and we did talk about the book and, you know, we did all that. And I just thought, oh my God, you know, I knew that I wanted somebody committed to personal growth. I'd just given up on men that weren't, because I said, that's it, I'm no more, you know, unless they're really committed to what I'm committed to, I'm not even bothering.
Right.
And yeah. So, you know, I knew that he was who I was looking for, but he didn't know I was who he was looking for. And so that's what our book is about. That's why it's Falling in Love Backwards, because, you know, he was not interested in me because I wasn't the pictures of who he thought he needed to be with. And, you know, and so that was our struggle. And the second part of the title is An Unlikely Tale of Happily Ever After, because we did get to happily ever after and we still live in happily ever after all the time here. We're just in the ocean.
You know, go ahead. Better and better.
Yeah, that's what amazes me is how could it get better than it was so, because it was so great. It was beyond our expectations or beyond anything. So awesome. And then we go, gee, that was just better than before. How did it get so
That's awesome.
We were in the ocean here in New Zealand and, you know, we have this little private beach and we took off our bathing suits. We're jumping in the ocean, you know, and just hugging each other and going, oh my God, life is so good. You know, the green hills and the ocean and each other.
Yeah. So don't you think that's a pretty common thing, Landon, that men, I think men on an average, I think because our culture is so like movie star oriented, you know, from movies and television and makeup and, you know, I don't know, what do you call it? Surgery that makes people more beautiful and, you know, all these things that, I think, I mean, it's been my experience in the relationships I've been in, you know, that the men are always looking for this like image of like this idealized woman that is, you know, not really seeking the inner spirit. But I'm curious as to what you feel about that from a.
There's a couple of things. One is there was a book by Naomi Wolf called The Beauty Myth, which in which she defined how 400 models who were so skinny that when you saw them on the street, you wouldn't necessarily think they were attractive. But under the cameras and with airbrushing, etc., you know, created this myth of beauty. And that her premise was that the entire beauty industry of,
cosmetics.
You know, cosmetic surgery, you know, all the things, I mean, $1 billion or whatever was basically created out of this. So kind of that's one part of it. The second part is that I think both men.
Let me jump in for 1 second on that thought, because what ends up getting talked about on this network a great deal, and Biggie's wife, Mel, who's the co-producer of this station with him, was a model in I think in South Africa where she's from, and beautiful. But I just heard her say on her show the other day, we live in this world that's run by corporations, and they have nothing that they do has our best interest at heart. Nothing. What they are doing only has their income at heart. So we're living in this kind of program, like we're programmed to think that certain things are beautiful, that we have to, even I think women are programmed that we have to go out and buy makeup in order to look good. We have to, buy certain clothes in order to look good, certain styles. We have to hate our bodies if they're not perfect. And, it's just like an insane, crazy, and I think I've seen men too a lot. I can say this because I've had personal interaction and discussion with men on this. One of my really good friends has been a facilitator in the Mankind Project for about 20 years.
Oh, nice.
He's amazing. He and I have dialogued in fact, he reminds me of you a little bit. He's a real tall, kind of endurance athlete. But he and I talk a couple hours, probably at least once a month, if not once a week for 20 years. And we're always talking about weighing, the masculine, feminine, the, what is the truth of our being and how do we grow into that? And I think one of the things we've talked a lot about is how a lot of men are looking for the kind of woman that's going to then give this mirroring of how they think they should appear to the world instead of looking for the woman that's going to meet them in their heart. So I don't know. Go ahead. I kind of jumped in, but I wanted to expand
something too. Jennifer Weiner, who's a best-selling writer, wrote an amazing thing that was in Sports Illustrated and then the New York Times. And I'll send you the link, Carrie. But anybody could Google it. She just wrote this brilliant essay about women, doing stuff to our bodies.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's like if they can find a new way to make us spend money on ourselves, they will. Whether it's Botox, which I don't believe in, but surgery, liposuction. I mean, women are just crazy. With
and the they is the 1% corporate reality. We can call it whoever we want to. That's basically been harvesting, income off of us for thousands of years, and we're ready to be done with that.
Yeah,
and have rosy cheeks and be natural and healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
So both men and women. What we're saying here, both men and women are subjected to this tyranny, the tyranny of the beauty myth.
Yeah.
And
I was a model, for heaven's sakes, in my 20s, and I was never perfect enough. I was never skinny enough. That was like you can't measure up to this thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's a layer that's there. And one of the things, it's funny because one of the things that the Ashwar, that jungle tribe that I visited, would say is that, the dream that we're dreaming is based on separation, and that we're separate from the world we live in and from each other. And that therefore, part of the ramification of that is not only the environmental degradation, but also the social injustice of the great inequalities that we see in our world. But the final one is that the spiritual vacuum, the hollowness that we live in because of this false premise of separation, and that hollowness is fed with consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And part of
beautifully said, very well said.
Yeah, that feeds right into the corporate engine that needs to be driven by an emptiness in ourselves that seeks to be full by buying stuff, by having stuff, by looking a certain way, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and it is that false hunger of satisfying the innate desire in us to experience oneness. And
exactly.
And I think Werner Erhard was the one who said, you'll never get enough of what you don't really want. And that's so true.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Great. You can buy and buy and buy. It's not going to fill this. It's not going to fill what you really want.
Yes.
So then superimpose or interject relationship into that
sphere
of
Right.
of a mindset.
Yeah.
An unexamined mindset, an unexamined story that most people are fed from the day one of being born,
Yeah.
and are living in, trying to fulfill, trying to fit in.
Yes.
Everybody is saying, "Jai, I'm unhappy, but if I get more of something, or if it gets a little bit better, if I get to be a little prettier, or I get a prettier woman, or whatever, my life is going to be better." So now there's things that brings about that are practices,
right,
in that they become a normative behavior.
right. Hold that thought just a second, because along those lines, I remember when I started waking up and I started hearing the fairy tale that I've heard since I was a child, of the white knight coming along and rescuing the princess, and the princess falling in love, and they go off and run their kingdom together or whatever, is really this story that's designed to tell us about remembering to fall in love with ourselves, to fall in love with the being that we are. So I think there's a lot of these little stories that we've been fed, and I don't even know, you could go on with that. I don't want you to lose track of what you were saying, because I think it's really valuable.
I just want to say too that after I met Landon and I went off on my own with my 2 little kids and all that, I was in serial monogamous relationships for 30 years, but there was no, I just wasn't ready to commit to anybody. It took a long time. So here he comes along. I'm 60, he's 66, but it was like, okay, I'm ready. This guy's it, but it was all that I'd worked on myself for 30 years. It took all my strength and all my skills and all my centeredness to be with him through his stuff about, I wasn't it.
Right.
Yes.
So you come back to the false stories, Landon. Can you go a little further down that path?
Well, I was going to say, so there's 2 things at play here. So one is me as a personality with all of this programming.
The ego.
And that you might say my ego personality, and the ego is trying to continue its survival by doing the same things over and over again. And then there's the reality of being with Diane. And so, the reality was in our, here's how natural it felt to be around her, how easy it was for me. I liked everything about her property and her, and the way she'd organized her life. Our sex was wonderful. It's gotten a lot better, but our lovemaking was, so there was this reality of Diane that, and by that time I was clear that I needed to surrender to reality, but I was also burdened and suffering because of this programming. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't willing.
And this is so important, because I think it's so common.
Yeah,
it is.
And I wasn't willing to relieve the pressure of that struggle by saying, okay, we're not it, or okay, let's just get married, because then I won't have to suffer anymore about this internal struggle of are you it or not?
And the are you it, if she wasn't it, who you had all this depth with, what did you have to go back to? One more superficial, it's a woman who matches some beauty pattern. Another thing that's really interesting, my friends and I, who I call my sisters, the goddess women that I know, one of the really cool things that has been said lately is we don't need to be in competition with each other. And that's another thing that's set up in this society that's horrible. And, but, when you're kind of going in this contrast within yourself, am I going to stay with this incredible woman who I feel comfortable with, who I flow with and have all this magical energy with, or am I going to go back to this facade that has been built for me in this culture, telling me, oh, that's what my life should look like. And that is huge. So yeah, and I know, Diane, you played a really big role in
I have to say that I had the same battle going on inside of me. And I'm really grateful that I had learned to journal, and in all my human growth, writing has always been a key for me. So I was journaling a lot because my ego was screaming, get away from this man. He is, who does he think he is to tell you that you're not it, And, but then deep inside, my heart was saying, no, I really love this man, So it was a battle inside me too. Am I going to listen to my ego? I had one woman say to me after she read our book, girl, where was your pride? And I said, hey, my pride was right there with my ego screaming bloody murder, get away from him right now.
And your heart was speaking louder than anything else.
Yeah, and it was only because of my journaling that I was able to stay in touch with my heart, which kept my guidance kept saying, you stay open, you stay tender in the midst of what felt like a barrage of really negative, to my ego, total invalidation. So, and, so that's what we wanted to share with people. Hey, if you can get through this minefield, you can get somewhere. That's the happily ever after that we both had really wanted, of a real deep partner. And I just have to say, I'm writing 3 books in 3 years. He's written books. It's like now that we're together, it's freed up so much energy that we were wasting, in this search looking for this ideal person. Now that we have each other, there's a stability that is, and so nourishing. It's nourishing.
So how did you guys navigate some of these waters that came up of one
of the things that, I can't say I was the best at it as we were going through the process, which is talked about in Falling in Love Backwards. I mean, but I was always clear that I was being responsible for my own, that's where I would end up, as responsible for my own feelings and my own opinion. So if I said, to Diane, I don't see us together, and I don't,
you don't fit my pictures.
You don't fit my pictures. Of course,
but you guys were honest enough to have that kind of conversation.
Oh, absolutely. That was part of the deal. And Diane, and that would hurt Diane, obviously, and hurt her ego. Yeah. Wouldn't hurt her, but it would hurt her ego. And I was suffering because I hated it that I didn't. There were times when I just saw her as so beautiful, and then other times I didn't see her as beautiful, and I was struggling with this perception thing, and I knew that it was somehow or other I was burdened by these lenses that had me see the world certain ways, and partly because
we call that old data or old computer programming.
Yeah,
fine.
Because we're really like a computer.
Yeah, it was like a computer. And I said to him at one point, one of the things that comes out in the book that I think is really cool is that there were times in the relationship where it was so bad that if I could have left, I might have. But there were 3 different times it was so bad. And all 3 times we were stranded somewhere with one car, or I was in New Zealand here where I couldn't really leave. Or, another time I was on an island where there was a boat to get away and I didn't know how to drive the boat. So, there was this kind of there's divine guidance that was going on. But at one point, the first time that happened, I said to him, look, you're 66 years old. Are you going to go to your grave with your pictures? Or are you going to get real? I'm real. And he had this fantasy about this other woman. I said, who is she? Like, can she stand up to you and go toe to toe with you when you're being a jerk like you are right now? And so, times like that really woke him up to the fact that he needed somebody strong to stand up to him and wake him up. His book's called Living Awake, but he was not being awake at those moments. And I was, strong enough to say, wake up, buddy.
And that, Diane, what you're saying, I think a lot of women are ready for that. And I think a lot of men are terrified of being on equal ground with women who are going to, I mean, I learned a long time ago, and, I'm a pretty intense person. I'm not your average, just, I mean, I'm a visionary. I've been living on the front lines of human change for a long time. And I've been in some really great relationships with some really great guys. But I think what it came down to eventually was they kind of wanted somebody who was just going to bat their eyelashes up at them and say, okay, honey. And I just couldn't live that way. I mean, I knew that if I couldn't be with somebody who was going to communicate with me on equal ground, and I'll tell you what, I learned so much from reading your book. I mean, I learned about tools that I never had when I was in a position that I might have done what you did, but I didn't have, I just didn't know how to do what you did. And I just honor you so much for that. And I think I'm so grateful that you guys are this living representation and you're teaching what you are, because I think people are really hungry and desperate for these tools. And because we don't know how do we, a man and a woman get to stand. I think this is the time we have to come into in human culture. I think it's really the cutting edge of our entire evolutionary change, is that we will have men and women that are like soulmates or twin flames or whatever we call them, that will be standing on equal ground with each other, telling each other the truth and loving each other for the truth of who they are, as opposed to how you match up to some, false scenario that got painted for me by this, this corporate culture. Yeah.
I just want to say that, I'm grateful to S, because that was my beginning of waking up, and it was confrontational. But one of the things they said was, hey, you're responsible for what's going on in your life, and you need to stop blaming other people and making them wrong. And that was the beginning for me. And in our relationship, that's the way we handle things is, if I'm upset, I need to look and see where is that coming from? It always goes back to my mother, who was very harsh and critical. So, he was like pushing my buttons that, I'd been on my own and I'd done a lot of growth, but there was still some healing to do that I couldn't do on my own. And I could only do it in an intimate relationship, so it brings up all your wounds. And so
that is everything we teach in 21st Century Superhuman. It's about, I can only see in the world around me, mirroring to me what's inside of me. And I think that is just such an important key, that we have to be willing to come into relationship will help us clear things we can't clear alone. I always say the greatest magnetism in a relationship is because we have the capability of clearing our deepest wounds together.
That's right.
But we also have to recognize they're our own stuff and not the other person's.
And most people, as soon as they get in pain, just blame the other person, say, I got to get away from you because you're making me upset and causing me pain, versus, oh, okay, I see. I got some pain here that I didn't know about, and I'm going to really look at it and be with it and see if I can't complete this. And then we can actually be together in a whole new space, so that's the basis of it.
How long did it take you guys to get to be operating in that kind of dynamic that you just mentioned, Diane?
Well, I have an answer to that.
You go.
Yeah. Well, we had gone through some kind of ups and downs, and then I had flown to New Zealand to be with him because he said, I surrendered to loving you. But then when I got off the plane, he looked at me and said, oh, no, she doesn't fit my pictures. And he wouldn't even hug me. So that was like a real crisis, right? I'm stuck here. We're at the very north end of the South Island. I was like so far from home, and I'd spent all my money to get here, and I didn't have the money to go back right away. Anyway, I said, okay, buddy, you were my trainer for 6 days. Let's call this the 19-day experiment. I want a relationship. You want a relationship. If it's not with you, it's going to be with somebody else, because I'm ready. So let's set it up as an experiment. And we tell each other the truth, and we agree to have a passionate love affair for 19 days. And he said no commitment at the end. And so we set it up as like this bubble, and we were here together completely alone for 19 days, this beautiful place. And it was very intense. And so everything came up, and we just kept looking and kept, I kept journaling, and, we just kept handling stuff. And that's when it began, really, a couple of months into our relationship.
And it takes so much courage to be willing to go into things when they come up to say, I recognize this is my stuff. I'm willing to go into it. I'm willing to breathe. We say, in my book, it says taking responsibility, or having the ability to respond to what I can see is my own data, creating the energy in the situation. And it takes a lot of courage. And, you know, I commend you guys for, you know, blazing a trail.
Thank you.
It helped a little bit that we didn't have a long-term commitment that we were trying to protect. Well, that we were trying to protect.
Yeah.
And that we could go 100% for 19 days without, you know, I could say, I love you. And I could also, at the end of the 19 days, say, sorry, we're not going to be together, or I choose not to be part of this, or, you know, that's it. We're going to be friends from now on, or, you know, et cetera. So
that was brilliant.
That was Diane's brilliance. Diane's been the angel in my life here, because she saved me. You know, in the end, the kind of cutting to the end, one of the things that was, so let's say I went out with this, whatever, this supermodel, right? What was my fantasy with this supermodel? Well, my fantasy with the supermodel would be that I have what I had with Diane.
Yeah. The experience.
I mean, that was the whole thing, you know, that we'd be sleeping in front of the fireplace, which we do in the winter. You know, we start a fire, we have a mattress on the floor in the living room, and we you know, I mean, romantic, you know, isn't that the romantic fantasy? I'm sleeping
with his incredible, passionate lovemaking,
you know, partner in front of the fireplace. I mean, we had what I always wanted.
And so wouldn't you say true romance really comes from deep intimacy, which is what you were developing with Diane, but you might not have been, not to say you couldn't have developed it with someone who was a supermodel.
That's right. Not to say that, but you have to. So for example, I'll give you another nasty thing about this, because one of the things underneath "she's not it" was the whole pattern of "this isn't it." And I've lived with that pattern my whole life about everything.
But he didn't know it until I came along.
Yeah. So it was not only "she's not it," but it was also, you know, my life isn't quite it. I mean, it's great. Everybody says it's terrific, but there's a little edge missing.
According to your ego.
You know, and of course, that's the pattern of the ego. Has to be in that this the most damaging thing to the ego is this moment now.
And having it be
and having it be it. Because the ego's entire mechanism is, this isn't it, but in the future it will be. And of course, I'm attached to the past, which then gets projected into the future. I'm burdened by the past, blah, 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 all those kinds of things, which you have to actually start to deal with if you're going to live in the moment. And those are the things that need to get, you need methodology, and you need insight, and you need awareness of an observer awareness to be able to deal with those things. And that's what we were working with.
And so let's come back to what you discovered long ago were the elements, you know, that we're really looking for in life. We're really looking for moving out of separation into oneness. We're looking for remembering who we really are. So when you step into a relationship that is making the choice of saying, this is my stuff, I take responsibility for my stuff, and I meet you on common ground where we can share love and intimacy, and that love and intimacy can deepen because I'm getting more clear within myself, it really becomes a deepening of the journey with the self, wouldn't you say? That is kind of facilitated by your presence with each other.
No, I want to say something really quick.
Go for it.
So yeah, that's what I realized in this 19-day experiment in New Zealand, which was really, you know, confronting, was that being in relationship with him, I was growing and changing at a rate that I wouldn't on my own. I was 60, and I was like, hey, when you're 60, you don't have time to waste. You know, I knew that good things were happening to me out of being with Landon, as uncomfortable as it was. And I wanted that. So that's what kept me going.
Yeah. So then there's another aspect to this that happened for me in relationship is I actually, because of the way of Diane's love for me, I actually experienced a deeper love for myself. Kind of going back to your mirroring. So I actually came in more to loving myself and accepting myself the way I am out of Diane's loving and accepting me. And so there's kind of a, this has happened like that. And, and one of the things that she says is, hey, come on, you could compliment me, or why don't you tell me something, about, you say that acknowledge, some beauty, something about me. And, I'm unpracticed in that, quite frankly. My life has been about being kind of holding it in and not, giving it forth, because this isn't it. So I'm not going to tell you that you're it, or that my life is it, or I'm not going to, live in gratitude. And one of the things that Diane has helped me and do, and we have a little ritual at night where we kind of look at what we're been grateful for and acknowledge each other. And so I'm gaining more of myself by being in relationship with Diane. And that wouldn't have happened in an ashram in India.
Or in a cave.
Or in the cave. I did those things, and, they had their benefits. But I really feel that a relationship can be, if it's properly structured, can be the path to a very enlightened, very masterful life.
Yes.
Because it does reveals the next thing that you have to work on.
That's right.
In your own structure. It's almost as if people have always talked about the layers of the onion. Well, every single onion called Landon, Diane, Carrie, etc., Biggie, they're all different layers. They're layered in there differently. There's some common structures and commonality, but they're layered in there slightly differently. So each person has to deal with the next thing that shows up. I was just one of the things, for example.
And I want to say something.
One of the things that that I've been trained into with all of these relationships, and with this isn't it at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, or the context within which I live, is the chase. The excitement of the chase, and finding, is she it? Or, am I going to find the one? And, there's kind of an adrenaline, a little excitement, and, that might be her.
That's a male thing.
I fall in love with her, and, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, and so one of the things that by having what I want, I actually have to give up the whole idea of the chase, the adrenaline, that looking, that yearning for.
Right. So how did you resolve that within yourself?
I just notice it's one of the things that I keep, it's what happens. I just notice it. I go, this does not serve me. This is not what I want. I'm not interested.
I always say, I think it's the difference between a man becoming conscious and stepping into relationship from a conscious standpoint, instead of having all those old programs run the show.
Yeah.
And or either of us, men and women both.
Yeah, but you got to deal with them, and they do come up.
Yes.
And you have to continually deal with them until they're no longer there. They no longer surface. And they do no longer surface the more you stand up to them and refuse to put your life energy into that pattern.
Right.
Just don't go there.
Well, yesterday you said to me that the chase conversation, you realized again that the fantasy of the chase is that you would have what we have.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, why would I need to chase anybody? I have what I hope to get, and it wouldn't even necessarily give me that, So I just wanted to say that to do this together, it takes a lot of courage, because there's times when I'll say to Landon, we still have this agreement to tell each other the truth and not hide things from each other. And I'll say, there's something I don't want to talk about. I mean, it's so uncomfortable, and I'll just say, okay, there's something I don't want to talk about. And then I know once I've said that, we have to talk about it, and we'll sit down. And before we have we have these dates to be together and have quality time. And it always begins with talking. And sometimes it's an hour or two that we're actually talking before everything's cleared away. Then we have this spectacular time together, making love, going out to dinner, doing all the things people do on dates. But for us, the talking and the clearing up anything that's between us, any little thing that we had, the annoyance that we didn't talk about at the time because we were busy, we just get it all cleared up. And we're both looking at, well, why did I get annoyed? What was that about? I mean, what was the trigger? We're trying to, really unravel the machinery up here that's keeping us from being in tender and open-hearted love, because that's really what we're trying to do, is outwit the machine that doesn't want us to have what we have. So
or clear the old data, keeping on clearing the old data.
And, Landon's book, Awakened Relationship, we wanted to offer that to people. We're giving it away free.
Nice.
And all they do is go to our website, which is fallinginlovebackwards.com, and they can download it. And if for some reason you can't get it, just email us there and I'll send the PDF. So it's only 50 pages. It's like a handbook for how to do this.
And that's kind of more of the tools. I mean, I really highly recommend the reading of your Falling in Love Backwards book, because it's such a really incredible tale of how you guys dealt with this process of, hold it up a little more, Landon. Oh, no, the picture, I guess the picture's on the back, isn't it? Yeah, it's really cute. Yeah, it's really sweet. But, it's such a great, I think we learn through story. And Diane, you actually teach writing, don't you?
I do. I teach writing because I believe that I teach Joy of Writing. It's called Joy of Writing, Finding Your Writing Voice. And I believe that writing is a way to grow and have a relationship with yourself in your journal. And I've taught this to teenagers too, and said, look, you've got your whole life ahead of you. How do you think you're going to make the decisions you need to make and the choices? This is a way to do that, And so I believe, I really believe in journaling. And as a way to discover the truth for yourself. And
so people can find you at fallinginlovebackwards.com, right? They can.
Yeah. And
if they go ahead. And how else?
Yeah. Well, I have a website, just my name, DianeCovington-Carter.com.
Okay. Also, is there a dash in that? Is there a dash? Okay, just three names, DianeCovington-Carter.com.
Yeah. There's another thing that we're really excited about is that this October, we're going to be in Bali for 4 weeks for a yoga training, a yoga teacher training. And Landon is going to be the person leading the personal growth part of that. I'll be there also. We'll be talking about relationships, everything that we have to offer. And so for people who want to really have an amazing experience, you can come to Bali for 28 days.
Yes.
You get your yoga certification.
I was looking at that online. It looks awesome. I was like, oh my God, I'd like to be there. Looks really cool.
Excited.
And it allows me with 28 days to really convey the depth of my teachings, of the things that I've learned over these last, I hate to say 44 years, but it's been 44 years. Not hate to say, but gee, wait, how did it get so old? But anyway,
that's called Radiantly Alive.
Yeah,
people Google that, Radiantly Alive yoga in Bali, and you'll get it. And it's got information there. We'd love to have people.
And so again, we'll be able to, really look at all these principles and, who are you and how do you discover that? And how does this whole bubble reality that we live in, how does it work? How do you create things? How do you have a relationship that works? What are the rules? What are the agreements that are necessary? And then there's plenty of time for them to ask questions and for them to actually start to embody this stuff. That's where the key is can you put in place the practices that,
they say it takes 30 days to kind of build new neurological bumps and sort of create those new patterns in ourselves.
And then also there's going to be the whole body component there of yoga and raw foods and Bali. So, you'll really be taken care of in this space of looking at your life.
And did it look like David Wolf is going to be there too?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. I think I saw him on the agenda.
Yeah. They've invited a number of teachers to come in and augment they're really these people. Daniel Aaron and his partner Leanne are. They're really going for how can we contribute to people at the maximum depth really make a difference with people. And they say, they're not relying on just themselves. I mean, they've set up the whole program, and Daniel's great and that stuff. But he said, he invited me to come as a teacher. He's invited a number of other very accomplished people in their own fields. And it's
radiantlyaliveyoga.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alive, yes, in Bali.
Yeah, radiantlyalive.com.
And that's in October of 2015?
Yeah, basically the month of October.
October 5th,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so that's good. And
But we encourage people to come and get our Awakened Relationship for free off our website. It's also available on Amazon, but we're giving it away because we really, at this point, we want to contribute.
Exactly. It's like I agree with you, Carrie. People probably should read Falling in Love Backwards, because it does give the love story part of it in it. And it shows kind of the examples of, how hard it was, how much suffering on my
huge.
and
Yeah.
But then, and it also, if you think about it, it implies, what agreements you would have to have, and, kind of what agreements we made we share those of our wedding agreements and things. And, but then the Awakened Relationship says, okay, fine, here's the how-to.
Mm-hmm.
You've got let's make sure that if you're really clear, here's the orientation you need. You've talked about it already, about being responsible for yourself. You have to have that orientation.
Yeah, we do.
Here are the agreements, of no blame, of treating each other's opinion and view equal to your own, and some of these egalitarian things of that you would normally think of in terms of an egalitarian two human beings, not one better than the other, etc., or one up, one down. But the ego is going to have all of that. So the agreements help you to true up to something that you've agreed to, when the ego is doing just the opposite.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the fun things actually in our dates is the talking ahead of time, because we're learning so much about our own mechanisms. And the more we learn about our own mechanisms, the quicker we can catch them, and the less they create suffering and drama. That we don't want.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I just want to say there's no drama. We don't have drama, and if something comes up, we're over it so quickly. It's just like a little blip. It's really fun that way.
And I think, in all these things, the more we do it, the better we get at it, the faster we move through it. I mean, and then you guys are opening the door to, what do we even know? The kind of level of relationship you're going to get to live in and represent. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I believe in stories, and it's like our wedding was so spectacular. I just have to say a couple things about that. We had my daughters were my little bridesmaids, and all our grandkids were carrying little baskets of flowers, and it was outside on my beautiful 8-acre farm in Northern California, and perfect day, and saying our vows, and Landon made this beautiful speech, which made everybody cry about how I was his angel. So that was incredible. But one of the things that's coming up for us that we're looking at too is the male-female thing, because we're old enough that we were raised very traditionally, male chauvinists for him, women taking care of men. So when that comes up in our relationship, I'll say to him, okay, that felt like a male chauvinist moment, and I have more freedom to express myself and say, hey, that doesn't feel right, or I'm trying to make a contribution here with what I know as a woman, and it doesn't feel like you're listening. So a lot of that's coming up, which is really great, because we want to get rid of all that.
Nice. Go ahead. Were you going to say something, Landon?
No, I was just going to say that a lot of it is not necessarily individualized to me as my life or my traumas. It's the male. The male conversation, the man that we're born into, the programming, the DNA, however you want to say it. A lot of it caveman stuff that's never been taken out of our psyches.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're dealing with. Some of it at that level for sure. I'm sure I know there are deeper levels because you keep going deeper.
Right.
But that's kind of what I see.
Another thing that, as far as what we're discovering, is I feel this whole level of acknowledgement is really key. And Gay and Katie Hendricks are great teachers on that. they talk about how the future of relationships is acknowledgement. And so that's something we're working on, is putting more acknowledgement in to our relationship. And I think with Landon being an athlete, he was trained to always look for what was wrong, and correct it, because that's how he made himself a better athlete. But that doesn't work in relationships. If you're focusing on what's wrong, you have to be willing to nourish each other with acknowledgement. And so we're actually, working on that. I'm better at it than he is.
Nice. That's a beautiful piece. One of the things that because I've become so involved on a global scale at this point, I started noticing, here we are so lucky. I always consider myself, we're part of, we're all from North America, basically, and then, the more modern New Zealand, Australia culture, European culture. And some of the things that come up occasionally are, look, we've even still got people, being stoned to death in other countries. And, there's still, genital mutilation is considered a common practice. And, all of these old, ancient, like archaic, not that it really, I don't know that there's, what we can really say about that in this conversation, but I end up feeling so blessed to be living in a country and a consciousness, or having grown up with a consciousness where we can broach these things. And I think of our whole human culture as a collective, and we're like an amoeba moving ahead, and the fact that we have the capability of moving into these higher levels of relationship. And I feel like that frequency change is going to help shift the frequency on the entire planet. As you said, Landon, and I believe that we carry around thousands of years of genetic data that's old and archaic. I tell a story of how when my dog died last year, and we do worksheets clearing out our old data. That's in my book. And suddenly I had cleared all this grief about my dog dying, and suddenly I saw myself running down the road being stoned to death. And I'm half Middle Eastern heritage. And I went, where did that come from? My what's embedded there, encoded there in genetic memory. And just that we have such a big process to shift. And this is a really beautiful cutting edge that you guys are doing of living awakened relationship, and how critical it is to the, just to the entire consciousness of humanity, I think. And then, we've got still things going on that are still archaic. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say something quickly, which is that I mentioned before, but, when you get this part of your life worked out, then it frees you up to actually make the contribution that you're here to make. And if 50% of people are still getting divorced, they're caught in that drama, and there's no energy to actually try and, impact the world to solve some of these bigger problems. So that's my sense, is that when you can work out your intimate relationship, you really can contribute. You really can contribute to the world, what it is you are here to contribute.
I like that.
One of the other things I'm reminded that of Krishnamurti, J. Krishnamurti, and he and during the time when there was a lot of anti-war movement, with the anti-nuclear, etc., he would go around to some of these gatherings, and he'd say, you really can't contribute to ending war until you take the war out of yourself. Mm-hmm. So you have to end the negative conversations you have about yourself. I'm not okay. I'm not good enough. I'm da-da-da-da, all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, anything you do will come out of that place. And you think you're doing the righteous thing, and, you're against the warmongers and all that kind of stuff. But all you're doing is contributing to more of the animosity that, of the problem. So we don't necessarily have stoning women, anyway, whatever, all the stuff in the Middle East that we're not a part of. But we have ourselves, and we each have our own programming. And until we get down through that, and that's why I think a relationship, if it's committed and structured properly, will help you get down through that quickly. And, it's not instant, but it's, it's quicker than anything else I've discovered, that then you become a more centered, a more not just mindful, but also altruistic human being. You become the love, the generosity, the compassion, the things that are actually, the sense of equality, the sense of how it should be, so to speak, based on who I am as a human being and who everybody else is as a human being. Those things are the natural outcomes of flowing out, of being that. And so, but you can't be that until you eliminate who you have been, who you're dragging into this moment.
Yes.
And the two things that I've discovered, that one of these ways I said that I didn't know what I needed to know with my wife, with my children, which was unfortunate, but that I didn't really understand that I had two very basic core elements to my ego. And one was, I am separate. So I'm going to defend that. I am separate. And the second thing is, I am not okay. And, my form of not okayness is I'm not good enough. And isn't it interesting that somebody has a fundamental core issue, you might say, or core that he's built his ego around of I'm not good enough, who has produced all of these achievements in his life,
to cover it up,
and to cover it up,
or make up for it.
And anyway, the point is that those two things are that's what I have to deal with. And then if I do those. Yeah.
And how common to humanity are those two things? I mean, I think that's the whole process of us breaking away from creator, going through the involution process into I'm going to live without love. I'm going to experiment in darkness, blame, fear, judgment, hostility, and control. We talk about this in 21st Century Superhuman. Create this whole world of darkness, and until we get to rock bottom and we think that we're not worthy. And then we're on this the involution process, and now we're on the evolution process back up, remembering that we are creators, that we are beings of love, that we are good enough, that we are everything that there is. We are all and we are nothing. And what is in 21st Century Superhuman is, yes, change ourselves, change the entire hologram. And this is how we change the world. We can only by cleaning up our own unconscious data, which Harvard studies say 95% of our data is unconscious, 5% is conscious. So we're carrying around 95% of this garbage of, generational thought that says, I'm not good enough. It's my fault. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get punished, if I don't do this or that. And that's what the entire mind section of my book is about, which we're just getting ready to go into. We actually read my book every Sunday night on CCN. We read a chapter and we discuss it. And so we're just getting ready to go into the mind section, which is about all of this, how we clear out the old unconscious data. So very exciting. But you're absolutely right. And I'm really stoked that we're kind of on the same track with this. I love what you guys are sharing and teaching. I think it's really cutting edge to what's going on in the planet right now, as far as us understanding that our thought creates our reality. And when we're carrying around unconscious thought that is not harmonious and not good, it's going to keep creating a resonance in this world, just like you said earlier, like throwing a rock in the pond, throwing a thought out into the field of creation. Why is there war on the other side of the world? Because there's still war inside of me,
Yeah. That's right. And I just want to say too, the subtitle of The Awakened Relationship is Transforming Upsets and Blame into Love and Harmony. So I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, we really want people to take advantage of that. And the love and harmony is so good. It's worth having the courage to go through the difficult stuff, because it really is real. There really is a happily ever after.
And so again, you're giving that away for free.
We are. For a limited time.
It's a PDF. The PDF that people, we're happy to share with people. I mean, if we can give this away and make a difference, and people can take it on board and have and end some of the suffering in their life as we've both gone through. Wow, we'd be so happy.
So again, where do people download it?
That's at, if you go to Falling in Love Backwards, www.fallinginlovebackwards.com, and you just click on, you sign up for our newsletter, which we send out every couple months, and you just can download it. And if there's any problem, then you just contact me, which I get the emails from that website, and I'll send you the PDF. So there won't be any delay. People could get it right away. And I think on my website, landoncarter.com, all one word, landoncarter.com, I think there's also a possibility of doing it there. But in any regard, if somebody just emails, me or Diane, I'm Landon at landoncarter.com. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm Landon at landoncarter.co.nz. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. It's on there.
Yeah.
And, we're happy to send that. And then, of course, if people need some assistance in implementing it or want a little bit of hand holding or coaching or anything like that, then we're available. Right. And they can call us up or email us and set up a time, and we're happy to, interact in a way that, to do what we can to contribute. And sometimes it's
awesome.
Yeah. And
so
sometimes
you guys are kind of doing relationship coaching, right?
Exactly. Because sometimes you just need that slight perspective to get a handle on your own patterns. Because one of the things that you talk about, Carrie, was this, the old programming. Well, the problem is that the old programming shows up on the same screen that any new programming shows up onto. And so how do you differentiate? It's all showing up on the same place, which is in my ego, in my thoughts, in my emotions, in my feelings, in my attitude, all those things. And, which is the one that is, do I want to, do I want to put my life energy through? And so sometimes you need, that slight, a coach, an outside perspective, but you've got to have somebody that has this orientation, because otherwise they will recommend what I call working at the wrong level.
Yes.
Don't ever say that again. Don't do that. Stop doing this. Do more of that. All of that is working at the wrong level, because you're trying to solve the problem of an upset, which is in fact an opportunity and not the problem. The problem is you need to heal your upset and get down to the core of what it is and discover it and let it go by not putting your energy through that pattern, over and over and over again.
That's awesome. And we say, if you see something coming up outside of love, if there's a point of pain outside of love, there's old data to be cleaned up. And if 95% of our thought is old data, according to Harvard studies, there's, we have a big garbage can to empty out that we want to, in the old way, we mirrored it on the other person. The old kind of counseling would say, oh, you need to get angry at that person, or, oh, you need to, but instead this new wave of understanding that is the 21st century superhuman way and the falling in love backwards way is living the awakened relationship way, is to notice what the data is inside of us, that we need to breathe and smile, change our neurobiology and work through and let go. And then we can be living a new kind of life. Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. And I just want to say that's where journaling really helped me, because I could hear the conversation that was like, get away from this person. And yet I could feel my deeper self say, you stay open, you stay tender. So those were really key things. And I just want to say too, that one of the things in Falling in Love Backwards is I talk about how to prepare for a partner. And I think that's really cool, because the mass consciousness, as I call it says all kinds of things, especially for women of a certain age, as they say in France, that there's no good men out there and, blah, blah, blah. And you have to really get past that. I used to say, when all my friends would say, oh, there's no good men out there, I'd say, I only need one. And I know there's one good man out there for me. And I did all this clearing in my house and clearing up stuff and completing things and relationships to create a space. So he walked into it. So it was very cool.
It was like walking into the spider web.
No.
No,
Well,
it's great.
No, and again, that whole concept is we're looking at our own old data that says there's nobody out there. Again, so it's a false premise. Are we going to hold the field for each other that we're all capable of stepping into a higher way of expressing love?
Yeah, and also, if you really want a partner, do you have space for that partner in your life?
Yeah.
Is your house set up so there's room for him or her? Do you have space in your closet? Just real practical things like, are you really ready for this person? Do you have time that you're willing to spend with this person? Are you so busy that there's no room for a partner? Just simple things like that.
Yeah, Michael Rice, who worked with the ancient Aramaic a lot, who's a longtime friend of mine who wrote the foreword to my book, says the biggest drug in our culture is being busy, because by being busy, we're covering up the pain we have of this old data that's still running the show. And rage is the second, but being busy is the biggest drug in our culture.
That's true. Yeah. And now you see people with their phones, two people out to dinner and they're not talking to each other. They're both doing their phones. It's like, come on, guys, when are you going to actually be with each other?
Right. So you guys, we got in the story to where you were in New Zealand, Diane.
Yeah.
And then you ended up jumping to getting married. But what happened in between there?
Well, there was a lot of ups and downs. There was like these moments of incredible closeness and intimacy and love.
What happened at the end of the New Zealand section where you came to New Zealand and you couldn't leave? Yeah. And you guys committed to getting along for 19 days or whatever.
Yeah, we committed to telling the truth and playing 100%. I would say he wasn't always playing 100%, but he was going for it, passionate love affair. I said,
and what do you think you learned during that time?
Well, I learned a tremendous amount. There was one night that was really bad when we were stuck up in the mountains and I couldn't get away. And he said, you're just not it. There's no us. And I didn't react. I just took a breath and I started praying, my own way of praying of just, okay, what do I do here? And I'm breathing and I didn't react. And he's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm praying, and then we just I let it go. I didn't react. We went to sleep and I woke up 2 hours later and I said, Landon, those are just thoughts. What you said to me, you're not it. There's no us walking down the street. Those are just thoughts, and what we have is real. And
that is incredible that you could come up with that. I think that's what touched me so much in the book, that you kept seeing through the sort of BS, or the old data and kind of like, Landon, how do you think you'd feel today if Diane had given up and hadn't?
Well, I was so discouraged when I first came to Diane about my ability to choose a partner. And yet I said, I'm just going to keep saying the truth, the raw truth, and just keep telling it what's going on with me. And it's either going to work out or it's not, but I refuse to not say how it is and be authentic. Right. What you're going to get is you're going to get authentic me. Now that part of the authentic me is, my ego patterns and, what my thoughts are, etc. But you're also getting a commitment for me to, try to see what I'm, what's mine. Mm-hmm. And I am not going to blame you. I'm going to tell you what's going on, but I'm not blaming you. And and that kind of is sometimes hard, I think, for people to set that up well.
Yeah. And the truth is, I think we're all desperate to live authentic lives. I don't think desperate is a good word, but I think there's been so much oppression in our culture and so much, you have to comply with what you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to be. We're all learning to do and be who we really are. And if we can find somebody that we can be authentic with, what a huge gift that is. And how rare.
That's the gift that Diane brought to me, was she's willing to hang in there and not disappear every time I would say something that was, very threatening to her ego, abusive. If somebody were, if I would say, you really look ugly today, or I don't find you pretty. Most women are going to just jump out the, you know, they're going to leave.
Yeah, I mean, Diane, it's so incredible. You had the capability to go beyond taking that personally. I think that was, where do you think you learned that? That was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, she learned it from me. That was like coming back around after the 30 years. You know, that was those are the principles in my book, Living Awake. I mean, she was kind of the manifestation of what I had taught and been working on for 30 years, and boom, here she is. And then being that's with that level of strength to meet me, and that's the thing I most admire and love about Diane is, you know, her, you know, the strength and the courage that she has to, you know, to meet me and to, you know, in many regards, see through the bullshit, of course, but also to see what the possibility is.
And I think that's the huge education in falling in love backwards that I loved so much, is how Diane really does a great job of telling that story and of everything that she did and how she dealt with things and when something would come up and, you know, and how she would just keep going and what kind of thought process she went through. I think that's just really an incredible story. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I just want to say that moment in New Zealand when he said, you know, you're not it and there's no us, and I was praying, what I did is before I went to sleep, I just went over and put my head on him and snuggled up to him, which my mind was screaming, you know, get out, walk out on the road by yourself in New Zealand in a 2-lane road in the mountains. My ego was telling me to just walk out the door. And I knew that was crazy, you know, so I was hearing the two channels in my brain and going, wow, this is really fascinating, you know, listen to this thing going on here, and just stayed in my heart and snuggled up to him and, you know, went to sleep. And then when I woke up 2 hours later and said, those are just thoughts, Landon. And he said, well, thank you for not deserting me in my pain. And I said, wow, you know, if you could have said that before, this is my pain, it would have been so much easier for me to hear. But, you know, it was the way that it was. It was meant to be the way that it was. And one of the things that you and I should have a conversation about at some point, Carrie, is that I feel like I'm discovering what is it truly to be feminine. You know, we were taught to be like men, really. When I started working in the 80s as a single mom, I had to wear a little blue suit and a tie, and, you know, we had to be like men. Well, I feel like I'm discovering what it is to really be a woman and feminine.
Right.
To keep my heart open and to stand for who he was and who he is, not who he was being at that time.
That's really a great insight. Yeah.
And I'm the lucky recipient.
Yeah.
And you created it. You know, I mean, we each, you guys both really put forth effort to choose what you wanted to call into creation, and then to be willing. I always say what stands in the way of our manifestation of what we desire is our old data. So you guys were willing to keep walking through your old data that was holding old things in creation and start creating something new together, which is.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the fun part of it, actually, is to understand and to actually learn about your own ego, your own mind. You know, I mean, for me, my constant, what's the word? Anyway, is the mind.
Default setting? No.
Yeah, well, no, the mind is not my friend.
That's right. Your mantra.
My mind is not my mantra. That's it. Yeah. Thank you. My mantra is my mind is not my friend. And it's a minefield. You know, the mind over there for me is a minefield.
Right.
I mean, I say things and she gets upset. I didn't intend that. How did it? And then we look at it. Then it becomes an opportunity. Yeah. And that's the cool part. And then you look.
You guys still there? Want to turn your video off just a second? We're kind of phasing out. Oh, cool. So
learn how this study. I mean, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and turn it back on. I think you're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We're in New Zealand. What can I say? You know
what happens too? I notice it'll phase out when we get really excited too. So we always say, calm your energy down, because this mechanism has to carry our frequency, and we're all talking about pretty high frequency stuff. So
I just want to say that we wrote our own wedding vows. And one of my vows was to always remember that even the challenges are what I chose when I chose Landon. So I always remind myself of that. And then one of his vows, which I really love, is that he would value my opinion with the same, equal to his own. And I have to remind him about that sometimes, the chauvinistic thing comes up and I said, hey, what about valuing my opinion the same as your own? So those are really two precious, very precious vows that we live with every day.
That's very good. And I would say about the thing about my mind is not my friend, basically our 95% unconscious data that wants to run the show is not our friend. And as it comes up, we have to know, basically what we do, and this comes from the ancient Aramaic, is cancel our goals related to it. So that's a whole process in and of itself, but it's pretty basic. It's very simple. And so when a thought comes up, that I have a goal that she understand what I'm saying, just say, I now cancel my goal that she understand what I'm saying.
I see. Nice.
And you basically are defusing that old data and you're allowing it to be unwound from the unconscious and released.
Great.
So I don't know if you guys have a PDF of my book, but I'll send you one and you can skim through some of that stuff. You'll probably find some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
So what else? We've got about 10 minutes left, 9 minutes. Any key points you guys would like to share as far as making it work as things go on?
Well, I would say from the beginning, what I recommend people do is be very clear on who they're looking for. And I knew that the number one thing I wanted in a partner was somebody really committed to personal growth, who'd done his own work and was, trying to live awake. Well, he wrote the book Living Awake, so I if you start out together on you have the same purpose, it makes huge difference. If you're not on you don't have the same purpose, I don't know if you can do this. You both have to be committed to living this way. And if you do and are, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
Because we're both committed.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that falling in love, the experience of falling in love is wonderful. I mean, everybody, the poets write about it. But being in love and creating love is a whole different experience. And I think for people that have fallen in love and have a relationship and now they're struggling a bit, that one of the things is to not try to recover the falling in love part, because often that's based on mutual needs that are supposedly going to get fulfilled by this person who looks like they're accepting me 100%, which I always wanted. But in fact, it's all based on fantasy.
And we call that codependency, when you think another person is going to give you something. And we also say that we are beings of love. It is a noun, not a verb. Instead of I love you, I am love in relationship to you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's as I said, I mean, you've just reiterated it, and is that don't try to go back to, we've lost that loving feeling and it's gone, and how can we get it back? That old song. It's something to be created, and in the creation, it's my experience in the creation. It's a very you could never project in your mind what you're going to experience. You can't. It's like you can't hold a goal about it. You just create it, and it's this magic that happens. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the reward for coming together with no mind, with no thoughts, and that connection. It's almost like a god and a goddess meeting in that place beyond time and form, where you're conscious that the other person is also conscious, awake, and joined with you in this place of no form. We sometimes laughingly say afterwards, there's this blob, there's us as the space, and there's this blob of Landon and Diane kind of in the space.
That is really cool.
It hasn't got a separation. There's no at least, maybe on the outside of Landon and Diane is a kind of a separation. But anyway, it's not something almost that you could describe, but it's something that is, as I said, a reward. And yet you can't have that as something that you're trying to hold on to, because you create it, it's there, you enjoy it, and then you move on to life. Yeah. And life brings up the next patterns, and it brings up the distance, and it brings up the annoyances, and it brings up the upsets, etc. So then even though you don't feel like it, it's not like I feel this yearning to jump in bed with Diane. I don't know. It's different. It's like we now need to create some time. We'll have a date, and then we clean up everything we possibly can through our talking and being with each other. And then we just gradually move to this place where there's no thoughts. And
then the dance begins.
And the dance, the dance is there.
So really what you're doing is clearing the things out of the way through your interaction with each other that are inhibiting your basic ability to capacitate love. And then as you capacitate love, you're merging together on that level.
Yeah.
And to be totally in the present moment with each other, at that moment, there's nothing in the way except just being.
And so how about any quick tips for people who are already in relationship where maybe one person gets this and another doesn't, and how to do this dance in a way that can keep making a person more healthy, even if their partner is not there with them?
Well, I would suggest reading Falling in Love Backwards and then reading Awakened Relationship and going from there, because, just reading those two books, you could really take it on. You could take it on.
I really agree with you. I think you've put fantastic material together there. That's grist for the mill for anybody who's.
Yeah, and then they can go. Yeah, and then they can go back if they want to learn more about the underlying principles into Living Awake.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's
or come and be with us in Bali for a month.
Yeah, but it's. I would say also that don't try to first read the books. Don't try to solve the problems that you've been having. Come to you want to first come to the methodology that's going to work.
Yeah.
And you need to get some agreements. One, that we want our relationship to work and we're willing to work for a time to see if we actually should be together, or we're capable of being together.
Nice.
Etc. And then come up with a methodology, agree on the methodology, and then follow it, or get some coaching, or etc.
You can come and stay with us at our farm in Northern California for a couple of days, and we'll totally work with you. That's another option.
Yeah, that's another option.
It's a beautiful place. It's very quiet and peaceful.
Yeah. I've got a friend who's already up there. I'll send her your way.
Yeah, and we work with couples, and we'll do all that at whatever level people are ready for, and that. So we're happy to do that.
So we're in the last couple of minutes, aren't we?
Yeah, we've got about a minute and a half. I'd like you guys to repeat your websites again.
Okay, good. So my name on this is Diane Covington, but it's actually Diane Covington-Carter. And my website is www.dianecovingtoncarter.com. fallinginlovebackwards.com, all the information about our book, and also to get the Awakened Relationship for free. And then Radiantly Alive Yoga in Bali. That's
Is it Radiantly Alive?
Radiantly Alive, yeah.
It's radiantlyalive.com.
Yeah, and that'll bring up Bali and what we're doing there for the 28 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, feel free to email us. We'll be glad to, be in contact with you. And thank you so much, Carrie. This has been incredibly lovely chatting with you for 2 whole.
Great.
Perfect. So awesome to visit with you both. And you're both so knowledgeable. And I'm extremely grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing in this world. It's just hugely needed. And I know everyone's heart is hungry for love, to give and exchange love, to give and receive love. And so, bridging between our old ignorance and, these ways that haven't worked so well into new ways that can work, I think is just like a huge gift to the planet. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Kate
All right.
Wolf's song, Give Yourself to Love. We sang it at our wedding. It's a beautiful song. Give yourself to love if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to the tears and laughter. It's a really good thing to end on. Give yourself to love.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, you guys. Many blessings.
Many blessings
Thank
to you.
you.
Adios.
Adios.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, Carrie.